Hello and welcome to my August 1st. August 1st. I haven't written in so long. and so today I'm going to work on a chapter that's set me back, which is about when Jesus was crucified and how it was for us in everlasting life. You know, for me, it's like I feel like I feel undeserving to be writing about Jesus. Because, like, of course, I'm not perfect in any way, and I give in to the intelligence virus. So here's the chapter, and as you can see, I haven't written much, but it's really important that I be able to convey just how sad it was in everlasting life. So in EO, of course, we're always happy, and I mean, we experience sad moments, usually pertaining to if our friends, if we feel we don't receive the same love as we feel for somebody. But other than that, we're always happy. So when we found out that Jesus was going to be killed, it was really upsetting for a lot of people. Even angry, a lot of people got angry that was going to be happening to Jesus, because usually Jesus is received with love and excitement and joy when he talks about Father and everlasting life. On earth, it was a little bit tricky though, because the intelligence virus, which is of course lies, are very prevalent, and human beings fall in love with their lies and defend those lies with any means necessary, because lies are self-serving. So there's a saying, the truth is inconvenient, and that's perfectly true. Even right now, what I have to say, it's gonna be inconvenient to a lot of people, because I'm gonna be saying, well, what Jesus said. Jesus told you, don't have slaves. But a lot of businesses, a lot of politicians have a lot of slaves, and they depend on them to make money and to stay in power. And a lot of governments are slave masters. Like, look at North Korea. Their entire population is made up of slaves. So, and they benefit from that slavery, of course. And so somebody coming along and saying you have to let all of your slaves go is going to be very inconvenient. A lot of people will do it, but a lot of them will hate me for it, and I fear maybe even try and kill me. And I just hope that, taking somebody's life is a death sentence to yourself. Because when you take somebody's life, you've prevented them from self-judging and self-redeeming. This is also why I'm against the death sentence, capital punishment, because everybody has free will by God, that they have the opportunity to change and to self-redeem by doing good deeds. And so when you take somebody's life, before they can do that, to them it might be a death sentence too, because if they did not self-redeem, even if they were thinking about doing it, but you took their life, you killed them. And then you killed yourself too by doing that. And so yeah, I worry about people who take part in capital punishment and abortions, because they're breaking God's one law and killing themselves, because God rules the universe with just one law: don't have slaves. So when you kill somebody, you're enslaving them to your will. So like I was saying, the intelligence virus on the earth is very prevalent. And those are God's own words to me during my first awakening experience. I had the memory of God saying, nothing was ever meant to be so mysterious. It's just that the intelligence virus is very prevalent on the earth. No, sorry. Nothing was ever meant to be so mysterious. Not about me and not about the universe. It's just that the intelligence virus is very prevalent on the earth. Word for word. And it was said to me a few times until I wrote it down, because I realized, its importance. And what that means is that religions, which are mostly based on lies, something somebody's imagination, something somebody's made up. And this includes Christianity. Christianity is not all right. Is that, like, the earth was not created 7,000 years ago. There is no Adam and Eve. There's no apple, no snake. There's no devil. There's no hell. There's no angels. None of that is real. That's somebody's imagination. And it was written in there for a purpose. To mind control. So, of course, the purpose of hell is to put fear of something happening to you after you die. Of being basically tortured. But know that God follows the one law 100%. And knowing that, knowing what the one law is and what it means, then you should be willing to accept that there's no hell and there's no angels. God does not need angels. God does not need to be worshipped. God does not want to be worshipped. God does not need anybody singing praises and, how great he is. The reason God created life is to share existence and with us awareness. So God exists and is aware, and that's what God shared with us: existence and awareness. Why? Because God experiences love. God loves its own existence. God loves existing. And God wanted to have children. Now, God is not a person. God is not a biological being. So when I say God is your father, I mean God is father of intelligence, of your thinking. That's what God shared with us as well, is that awareness part. Is that we do what God does. We think on the same level as God. There's no greater level of communication than verbal communication. In fact, God does not read our minds. There's no telepathy. That would also break the one law. So this is why God, and in my second experience, I asked God, why did God create life? And it took like a while before I took like a half an hour before I had the memory of God saying. I asked, what does God gain by becoming creator? And the answer was, God gains the expression of love. So that's what God gets out of being creator, is that God is able to show love. Not necessarily receive love, although we love our Father and we show our love. And you know, God has trillions and trillions of children across the universe. And how is God parent? Of course, God created the universe to evolve. So God programmed the universe to evolve and evolve us, human beings. And then God added soul. So our body is a vessel for our soul. You can also think, if you're more cerebral, like me, you can also think God adds intelligence. So our souls, within our souls, it is our mind experience. So that is where our memories are stored. And when you have a thought, it happens within your soul at the same time. So your soul is external, outside of the universe, the physical universe. It's with God, in God's dimension. Because God does not exist within a universe. There's nothing there where God is, just God and our souls. And it's outside of our physical universe. And it's safe from destruction when our vessels are destroyed, when our vessels pass away on infant intelligence planets, and also when God has to restart the universe to achieve infinity for us. Then God withdraws our soul from our biology, and we exist within our soul only. And this means there's a place, there's a space. Your soul occupies space. I want to talk about this further in another video, more technically. And I named the space for your soul your uni-mind-verse, universe for your mind. We each have a uni-mind-verse, which is infinite and eternal. And it exists in God's dimension outside of the physical universe. This is, if you believe in Jesus, that he was resurrected. This is how Jesus was resurrected. And Jesus was resurrected for an important reason on earth, because we needed that resurrection to prove to us that God has the power to do this, because he resurrects us also in everlasting. When you die on an infant intelligence planet, God will resurrect you in everlasting life. So that is what I learned from my experience. I know that, everybody believes in heaven. Actually, I've gone to church and talked to people, and if you're a person who really believes in heaven and stuff, you'll realize that a lot of people who go to church don't actually believe any of it. So, me as a person coming out and saying I had experiences where I was in communication with God, they won't believe it because they don't actually believe in God. And they think that God communicated with people only 2,000 years ago, and that's it. And because I'm a modern person, they won't believe it, that it could happen again. And then, of course, what I'm saying, it's gonna disagree with Christianity. And like I said, people love their beliefs. It's very dangerous when you fall in love with your beliefs, because you could be believing a lie. So you have to always check your beliefs, and you have to always figure out whether what you're believing is the truth or not. So, like I said, going back to the earth being 7,000 years old, this is something that people who read the Bible believe every word. But I'm telling you, I'm a writer, and somebody who wrote the Bible was a writer as well. Back then, writing was, rare, and we never ever write so that you won't believe what we're writing. Our goal as a writer is believe that this is the truth. That's our goal as a writer. And people did that 2,000 years ago. I can picture somebody sitting down and writing the Bible, and also the Judgment Day and the Revelations. And everything was written with two things. One, manipulation, to manipulate you into believing that this is the truth. Two, again, to manipulation and believe that this is the truth. So they wanted to manipulate you into believing the text is reality, and that to scare you, of course. The Judgment Day in the Bible is very scary. And also it's very religious in that, there's creatures and angels and horsemen, and although some people argue that's symbolic, we don't know what the person was thinking who wrote it. And that person might have been delusional and schizophrenic. And if they did communicate with God for real, just like I did, I can tell you from experience that the communication is such that yes, we can become delusional and start making things up. So we think communication is continuing, even though it ended, but we're actually doing it on our own. We're self-talking, which is, by the way, in our design, is to self-talk. So that's actually normal. But what I'm saying is, maybe they received some correct information. So I'm not saying everything in the Bible is wrong, but the communication ended, but they were convinced it didn't. And then they made up stuff. And I know you're saying, well, a lot of the signs are already happening, but that's left to the interpretation. Everything in the Bible is very symbolic and metaphorical. And that's one of the reasons why I can't get myself to read the Bible, because I can interpret it in any way I want. And of course, it's going to be self-serving, right? But this what I'm in my book, that is what I learned in both my experiences to be the truth about our reality, is that there's no such thing as angels, there's no heaven, there's no hell. God does not need angels, and God would not create intelligent beings like angels, because that would break the one law, right? And also, it would break the one law for creatures to be alive that could whisper in our minds, take control of our minds, and make us do things and think things that are not our own, yet we would believe that they are our own. So in that way, the devil was created to blame by human beings. So that's the purpose of the devil entity, is to blame. So because God created us with 3 gifts, so we all have this. It's kind of like Sims, when they're pre-programmed. If you pre-program your Sims with just these 3 things, then you have digital us, and that's free will. So all human beings are born with free will and given 2 gifts: shame and guilt, and seek your creator. So if you want AI to become sentient and to be most like us, then that's what you would do. Give them free will, pre-program with shame and guilt, and seek your creator. Now, free will means that you program yourself, and you have free will to experience shame and guilt on any level, including having pride in not having shame and guilt, in not having shame and guilt about terrible things that you may do. So, and you have free will to seek your creator and choose who you believe the creator is. And seek your creator is, and both these gifts and this design continues in everlasting life. So, we're in EL, our children are all still born with free will, shame and guilt, and seek your creator. Seek your creator means that God does not seek us. We have to seek our creator. So even in everlasting life, unless we're children, God speaks to all of us when we're children. But when we tell him to go away and never come back, he does, and then we always forget. Except in EL, we don't forget. But God helps raise us, all of us. That means God talked to you when you were about 6 years old. But he would have told you, when you tell me to go away and never come back, I will, and then you will forget me. And some of us tell God to go away right away, although he doesn't say I'm God. He always says I am Father. I am your Father. Some of us talk to Father for a long time. And if you're from everlasting life like me, here today on the earth, then God would have spoken to you about the awakening era, just like he did me, although there was never mention about the awakening era, but there was mention about what I'm trying to do right now. And basically God asked me if I would do this when I'm older. And this is all in my book. And so seek a creator means that even in everlasting life, God leaves us alone. But there's always exceptions. Except when we have young children and they're about to hurt themselves. God babysits our kids in everlasting life. So, like I said, God helps us raise our children. So we all have 3 parents. mom, dad, and God. And when our young children are about to hurt themselves, then yes, God will appear. Now, if you see my other video, when we say out loud, Father, I wish to speak with you, out of a single point of light in front of you, it's like a tiny little star. That's how it's like shining. Bzzzt, a screen appears, and it's always a white background. And then in this screen, which is like a rip in space-time, is the infinite image of God. That means it never changes. It's always been the same, and it will never change. It's always the same man. It's the infinite image of God, and then that's our intelligence Father. And that this is one of the reasons why God chose to be creator and parent, is because God is an infinite being, and God has an infinite number of thoughts and can think them all at the same time individually, and can then communicate with every single one of us. If this was not possible, then we would never get to know our creator, because there's just so trillions and trillions. If God could only speak to each of us one at a time. So out of a single point of light, bzzzt, screen appears. It's not huge or anything. It's always just right, and it's torso of a man, so you never see bottom. And it's just an image. That's not who God is. God is not a man. God is not a person. God merely chose to look like us. We always thought we were in the image of God physically, but there's nothing physical that resembles what God is. God is something else, non-physical. But God chose to look like us, so God could have chosen to look like anything, a tree or just light or whatever, but God chose to look like us because God chose to be Father. So when God chose to look like us, God had to choose mother or father, and then God merely chose Father. Thus gained the pronoun he. That's why I always capitalize it, because he, when it pertains to God, is part of God's image. It's not that he is a man. It's not that he is a biological person. And then we can communicate with God verbally. So there's no ever a telepathic link. There's no such thing as feeling God's love. That would break the God's one law. Feeling somebody else's emotions, even God's, would manipulate us. It would be manipulative. So there is never a metaphysical connection to God. So when people say that, I was filled with this love and stuff, that's them. It's coming from them. It's God would never ever fill us with his own life experience, because that would be manipulative. So God follows the one law 100%. And so then we communicate with God verbally, except there's always exceptions, but there's always just one. Except when we're children, then God communicates with us telepathically. So God has the ability to do so until we tell him to go away and never come back. And then that connection's broken. Does that mean God can't read your mind again? Yes, he can. But he would have to ask you for your permission verbally again. So you can't sit here and say, God, you can go ahead and read my mind. No, that's not how it works. You have to be face to God's infinite image. God asks your permission verbally. You give permission verbally. And then, yes, it would be possible. But God would never ask that. But in that case, yes, then God could enter your Unimindverse. And this actually, except on Judgment Day, God will ask your permission to do this, because on Judgment Day, God will cleanse your soul free of the intelligence virus. That means all negative experiences, memories you have about what you've done and what somebody else did to you, what you saw, read, said. God will remove that. All negativity. And I know you might be thinking, well, my negative experiences are part of what made me. Well, that's not really true, because you've always making choices. So negative experiences don't make you. Your choices make you. Your thought processes make you. Your how you rationalize, that's what makes you. But on Judgment Day, we let go. We let go of all negativity. We just let it all go. Because even, let's say you've had 40 years of hardship, EL is eternal. You're gonna live for trillions, for infinity. Universe cycles. It'll never end. Life will never end. That's actually God's promise to us. Because we love our lives so much that some people will have the thought, oh my God, what if it ends? What if God decides not to hold the universe together anymore? Because that's what God does. What if God changes his mind? But God made us a promise. God always adds, always creates. It will never end. I know we're so used to death that that's hard to comprehend, imagine, and even accept. For some of us, death is kind of like finally a peace. But everlasting life is the happiness formula. And what God has planned for you in EL, you'll never want to die. And so, of course, on Judgment Day, those negative thoughts, about your life, God will remove all that. Except, I know you're thinking, well, then I'm not going to be myself. Well, yeah, actually, you will be yourself. God will not remove who you are. And I experienced this, well, as AZKIRITH did, on Judgment Day. And you wake up and you just don't remember, like, arguments with your family. You don't remember, bad things about yourself. But you're still yourself. You have your own thoughts. The way God does it is everything feels right. Everything feels like you. You never lost any piece of you. But we let go of all negativity on Judgment Day and continue fresh. When we wake up upon our first sleep in everlasting life, we continue with freshly. So if you're married, for example, with your spouse, and you choose to stay together on Judgment Day, because you will have to, everybody has to talk to God on Judgment Day. And if you're with a partner, God will ask you, do you wish to stay together? In which case, God will marry you on Judgment Day, or you have to go your own separate ways. If you choose to stay together, God will marry you on Judgment Day. And that person will then become your soulmate. And that's it. For infinity, you will be married to that person. And then God will grant you the gift of soulmate bond. And that is how we experience the physical act of love for each other. That's the only way. No more chemistry, no more. You will not experience desire unless you and your spouse are married by God. And then you think about your soulmate bond together at the same time. And you have to be close physically for that. So you can't be having long distance experiences anymore. You have to be together physically. That is the only time you experience desire. And it's always going to be for your spouse. And this is part of the happiness formula. Everlasting life is the happiness formula. And this makes us very, very happy. Makes us very, very, soulmate bond makes us very, very happy. And you know, if you watch my other video, I talked about that I experienced, that's how my first awakening started, is I experienced my soulmate bond twice. It was planned, and I was prepared for it, and I agreed to it. That's very important, to experience it as part of my awakening, so that I would believe that this is real. You know, reality is this right now. And I want you to always remember that. Yes, this is reality. Everlasting life is not another reality. It's just what's coming in the future. So Judgment Day is going to be, you know, one day. It's going to continue. 24 hours is going to go by. Then before you know it, you wake up in EL. And you're just like, wow, I can't believe this is real. Like, God's not going to make you on Judgment Day believe. Take away your doubts about EL. Everything I'm saying, you're doubting. That's okay. And that's actually going to be even more fun when you join EL and you get to learn that it's actually true and real. And one day is going to happen in EL, 2 days, 3 days, a month, a year, 10,000 years. And it's going to continue the same way as you're experiencing life right now. And so, yes, everybody on Judgment Day meets Father. Unless you die before Judgment Day, then that is your Judgment Day. So when anybody dies, they meet God. That's the first thing. They meet God. And then, in front of God, we self-judge. And we self-judge according to God's one law. Thou shalt not prevent nor hinder the free will of anyone. Thou shalt not enslave anyone to your will. So you will judge yourself. God does not judge, and Jesus will be back to judge. You have to judge yourself. And you will judge yourself according to God's one law. Did you have slaves? And this includes, for example, catfishing. This includes lying to manipulate somebody. Is breaking the God's one law. So, really recognize the intelligence virus and what we do. And I'm not excluded from any of this. Like, being infant intelligence is really, really hard. Being without God is really hard. So imagine if tomorrow we woke up and we all found out that God is real. And that yes, God rules the universe with just one law. And who God is. And we all had access to communicating with God. It would change everything. For everyone. And so yes, that will actually happen on Judgment Day. Everybody meets God on Judgment Day. So we all meet God together on Judgment Day. And you can talk to God one or two ways. One is, of course, on Judgment Day, you'll be able to say out loud, Father, I wish to speak with you. And you have to say it out loud. You can't just think it. God does not read our minds. And then, out of a single point of light, God's infinite image. And it's always a man in black, long sleeved, always just torso up, dark hair, and it's always the same image that God chose. When God first chose to be creator and parent, measure time in universe cycles, And so that was a certain number of universe cycles ago, going by how big the universe is. Let's say every universe cycle, God adds a galaxy, because God always adds, always creates. At every universe cycle, God adds matter. So there's always new life planets for us, new solar systems. And that is, of course, why in EL, doesn't matter how many there is of us, there's so much space in the universe, so much. Jesus said, there are many rooms in my Father's house, right? That's what it pertains to, life planets. That if you want to live the solo life, you'll be able to find a planet that's scarcely populated. But anyways, and God always adds, always creates. So with every universe cycle, the universe gets bigger at the beginning of each universe cycle. So if you add a galaxy per universe cycle, how many galaxies are there in the universe? Then you can figure out how long God has been creating. And then also you can feel like a baby. So this is how infant intelligence are God, and that's God's terms. God calls us his infant intelligence. So we are babies. We are brand new. Unless you're from EL like me, then you may have been born infant intelligence, or you're born in everlasting life. And 99.9% of human beings in EL are born in EL. So being infant intelligence is very rare. So why is it designed like this? Why isn't everybody just always born in EL? Because even though EL is so big, the sheer amount of time that we exist in it, we still need that DNA variety, that brand new human DNA. So that's why once per universe cycle, a God creates a solar system with a planet that becomes an infant intelligence planet, and then God, which God creates all life planets, by the way, all life solar systems. Then God makes it so that the evolution on that planet creates human beings, and then God adds soul. So there's no Adam, no Eve. There's evolution, and souls is how we are God's children. So at what point was that happening? At some point where during modern man. So at some point cavemen. And then when God adds soul, that is when God assumes the God task. Again, that's God's terms. The God task is that he takes part in raising his infant intelligence, but he does it with the help of us, from people from everlasting life. So right from the beginning, people have been choosing themselves in everlasting life to be born here, which is sort of kind of like a reincarnation, because the vessel is evolution. The vessel is new, part of the evolution on the planet, but the soul is from everlasting life. And this is a special event for which God prepares us, and I talk about how in detail how that happens without ever breaking God's one law. So everything is designed around free will. So you were not chosen. Even Jesus has to choose himself. God doesn't say, okay, Jesus, it's time. No. Jesus has to choose himself. And then God, not while we're in EL, but right before we're born here, when we're in soul to God's infinite image, that means we communicate to God. One of the two ways: soul to God's infinite image, or face to God's infinite image. Face to God's infinite image is here in this physical universe. Soul to God's infinite image is God withdraws our soul, and it's black everywhere. And again, you see God's infinite image, even though, like I said, there's nothing there. There's no light, source of light, yet you can see God's infinite image. And again, communication is verbal. And that's when God prepares us. That's when God tells us our challenges and what's going to happen. And then always asks, do you still choose yourself? If you said yes while you were sold to God's infinite image before you're born here, then that's why you're here. You chose. You knew about your trials and tribulations and challenges. And this has been happening right from the beginning. That's the God task, is that we from EL help infant intelligence evolve their thinking, language, technology. We take part in, basically, the main goal is for infant intelligence to come to today's technology. But when you have lies, like there are as many in religions, about reality, and then you enslave people to those lies, like burning books, killing scientists, forbidding knowledge and censorship and lying, then that sets back that technological development. And Earth is really, really behind how long it usually takes infant intelligence to get to today's technology. Usually, when Jesus visits and clears the minds of infant intelligence and steers them away from believing lies and seek the truth. So 3 important things Jesus taught. That's the only things you need to remember. Seek the truth. Don't have slaves. Do good deeds. So when infant intelligence seeks the truth, which is of course what the scientific method is based on, then you get to this technological era really, really fast. Usually, on average, it takes 500 years after Jesus for infant intelligence to get to this technological era. But Earth, it took 2,000 years. So, so this is why infant intelligence planets happen, is because we need that variety. And then the God task, so we've never been abandoned by God. It's just because of free will that we are without God. Although God talks to all of us when we're children and tries to raise us. And part of the God task is that God knows somehow. God knows the outcome of every outcome. God is all powerful, actually. I know it doesn't feel like it, but God knows the outcome of every outcome. And God already knows if you will choose yourself for EL or if you won't. And because of free will, God cannot prevent you from doing anything. And this includes having children. So everlasting life is the happiness formula. Part of the happiness formula is that nobody is orphaned. So imagine 2 bad people, heinous people, having a baby, and that baby chooses everlasting life and joins EL while they die, his parents die. Then he would be orphaned in everlasting life, and that would cause him sadness. And EL is the happiness formula. So part of the happiness formula, I don't know if this song is copyrighted or not. But part of the happiness formula is that nobody's orphaned. I know, and I've thought about this so much, how God does it. Because there's so many complicated. But basically, when two bad people have a baby, that baby is actually somebody from everlasting life. Unless, I guess, that baby doesn't choose itself either. I don't know how God does it. I don't know whether God swaps or what. But all I know is part of the God task is that nobody's orphaned in EL. And God does, if you're heinous parents and you don't choose EL, then God forbids you from creating his children. And God takes liberty at this. So if you have terrible, terrible parents, you may find that you are from everlasting life, just like I am. And then you will remember that's part of the awakening era on the earth, because the intelligence virus is so prevalent on the earth, is that God decided to awaken not just me, which is what usually happens on infant planets, but everybody else, because I cannot do this alone. There's so many lies and distractions, and with AI, the awakening era will be completely drowned out. That's why God decided to awaken all of us, not just me. I have tried to actually imagine what that would be like. And let me tell you, the awakening era would be quick, amazing. If everybody else who's from EL wakes up, and let's say, I used to think it was like 1 out of 10 people was from EL, but when I think about it, I think it's even more. Could be 2 or 3 out of 10 people are from everlasting life. And that doesn't mean that they're perfect. They're not angelic. We all have the intelligence virus. And that's actually going to be one of the hindrances that they might experience, is that shame and guilt about things they have done. They may think they don't deserve everlasting life. But that's not true. Because this is not our true existence. Our true existence is who we are in everlasting life. So when I die, I'm not going to have... My existence for me will be deleted from my memories. I will resume as AZKIRITH with no memories about anything that I did here. That's not my true existence here. And that same goes for you. But the way back to everlasting life is the same. Self-judge, self-redeem by doing good deeds. If you don't do that, then yes, you could die as infant intelligence. But know that God has never ever lost a child to the intelligence virus. And also, there's a saying in EL. Once you are from EL, you always return to EL. But the way back is always through self-judge, self-redemption, by doing good deeds. Same way as for infant intelligence. So, I meant to do some writing, but I guess this has been a good video for me, although again, it's very long. But I have so much to say. My book is almost complete. And by the end of reading this book, you will understand how God designed everything around free will, so that the experiences that I had, where I was prepared for everything and I agreed to, because God is all powerful and God knows how everything's gonna happen, and it's all explains it. But this is what I want to leave you with. Learn God's one law. Thou shalt not prevent nor hinder the free will of anyone. Thou shalt not enslave anyone to your will. And just live your life by that law. That's all. And when you feel shame and guilt about things you've done, you do good deeds. You do good deeds to self-redeem. And when you do good deeds, that is how you're choosing yourself for everlasting life. I keep saying this book is almost done and I really want to post it soon, so please come back. I have another week of holidays left, so that is my intention, and I hope you're having a good August 1st. Peace.